Anyway, so just to introduce this topic, and we are missing another, let's say Michelle Stanhope is also a granddaughter of Ephraim Chase, and she couldn't make it here tonight, so Sarah's going to fill in for her. I guess that's my first Sarah, young man. That's Michelle.
He was born at Freetown, Massachusetts on June 1st, 1744. Chase went to sea as a cabin boy with his father aboard one of the many merchant vessels that sailed from New England. Later, he completed service as an apprentice carpenter. At age 21, Ephraim Chase married Lydia Hathaway. The young couple later moved to Nantucket, Massachusetts. He worked as a carpenter's trade for 4 years. Their first child was born in Nantucket in 1767. Then Ephraim and Lydia moved to East Machias. Among the very first settlers in this area, he arrived with David Gardner and built the first sawmill on Gardner Lake. A tall fellow, Ephraim Chase was known for his great strength. Even after his sons became men, he could take one under each arm and carry them quite a distance. Father of 11 children, Ephraim Chase had to work industriously every day to put food on the table, like many colonial-era families. Their children's names were of biblical origin: Mark, Esther, Levi, Deborah, Lydia, Cynthia, Wealthy, Eliza, Apollos, Betsy, and William Chase.
Before my wife Lydia and I left Boston, Massachusetts, I convinced her to go over to an artist studio on Boylston Street. You may have heard of Gilbert Stewart. And he drew a portrait of my wife before the 11 children came along. And there she is, Lydia Hathaway. When I arrived here in Machias during the summer of 1769, I worked 6 years at my carpenter's trade, provided for my young family, and took an interest in local affairs. My friends and neighbors mixed feelings about the problems we kept having with King George III and the British Parliament. Came to a head, but when push came to shove, we all stuck together.
Now, following the battles of Lexington and Concord, the British authority enlisted loyalist merchants to supply the troops who were under siege of Boston. Now, that fact too, combined with the fact that if you remember your history, you know that 1774 and 75 were not good years here in Machias. 74, the summer of 74, a lot of that crops failed. The weather was very bad for that. So they actually entered the winter of 74, 75 very low on supplies. And by the following spring, men, women, and children were all starving. Okay. So as soon as they could, Ichabod Jones, a local merchant, and also somebody that worked a lot, we've heard, for the crown, and was probably making money from them. But he had 2 schooners, and he would take the lumber that we cut here, and he would deliver it to different ports for money. Well, they were very desperate. They loaded those 2 schooners, the schooners, right? I keep going back and forth between exclusive too. I think they're both schooners at the time. And anyway, they loaded them with lumber and headed down, and of course Boston was usually the place they could get the best money for. And in doing so, they ran right into the blockade that Admiral Graves had set up there, okay? And which meant they could go in. He was very happy that they had wood to sell. He needed all kinds of supplies to try to handle this situation that was happening, and he was requesting more and more troops for barracks and things like that. And but he wasn't letting any ships leave. And Ichabod Jones went and pleaded with him and saying, "Look, I have people that are literally starving in Machias, and we need to get back we're gonna load up with food and head back. So he did, okay, he allowed him to go, but he also instructed him that they were gonna take an escort to make sure that they came back with the lumber, that, they could go Jones, promise. I guess Gray was getting very mistrustful of a lot of colonialists at that time. And what is really strange, and I know we've had many discussions about this, both in some of my classes and in this group, that why was a young ensign, really wet behind the ears, named Captain Moore, was made a captain, an ensign that was made a captain. Now, one of the things is, he was Admiral Graves' nephew. Okay. And I know there's all kinds of, I wish we had time to get them, some of them border on the soap opera side, some are, the side realistic. But he told him to take their tender, the Admiral's flagship's tender, which was the Margaretta, and escort this back to Machias.
Page 10, didn't it?
Did that? No, I wanted to bring that in at this point. Let's see where
Yeah, want me to pick it up?
Two merchant ships arrived in Machias on June 2nd, 1775, accompanied by the British armed schooner, the HMS Margaretta, commanded by Midshipman James Moores. Local people were disappointed of Ichabod Jones' intentions and arrested him. They also tried to arrest Moores, but he escaped.
Things started heating up between England and the colonies, and I heard that the loyalist named Ichabod Jones got Admiral Graves' permission to have the Royal Navy convey him down here. Jones arrived, unloaded and stored his wares. He called the town meeting and informed us that he'd trade his pork and flour and then reload his ship just like nothing had been happening. And of course, we didn't agree with that. He wanted to be paid according to the contract as usual. We didn't agree with that. Very few of us voted for that position because it would support the British who were fighting our friends and fellow patriots down in the Boston area. I'm going to skip right up to this next one. The expectation of Ichabod Jones that we would want to supply the British against our fellow patriots at Boston aroused us to assert our rights. My friend and neighbor, Ben Foster, proposed taking Jones and his vessels by force. 25 of us from neighboring towns, as well as people from here in Machias, headed for a meeting that Jones and Midshipman James Moore were attending. We arrested Jones after his failed attempt to hide in the woods. But James Moore escaped when he got back out to the Margaretta. Moore had 4 cannons, so we had to give up the pursuit. Jones's merchant sloop lay about 3 miles below, loading with boards. Suspecting the British would endeavor to escape out of the river and take the sloop in company, we sailed out to her in order to prevent it. But then Moore arrived, just as we had thought he would. When we were within a short distance, we caused him to sheer off by telling him that a ledge lay ahead of him. Being unacquainted with the water, he ran aground, where he was obliged to lay until flood time. This delay gave us an opportunity to add 25 more men to our group. Next morning, we manned Ichabod Jones' merchant ships, the Unity and the Falmouth Packet, and we went out to the Margaretta. We got pretty near where she was before she began to float. Later, we overtook her at the outer islands, where we attacked and captured her. From the Unity, John O'Brien and Joseph Getchell led our boys as we stormed aboard in the attack. A number were killed and wounded on both sides. 4 British were killed, including the midshipman in charge, and Samuel Watts of our group shot him. He died 3 days later. We lost 2 men in the fight. After the fight, we removed the guns and the ammunition and loaded them onto our ship. A few days after, a vessel which was sent out by the British Navy from Halifax, Nova Scotia, to survey along the coast, entered our river to inquire into the affair and espouse the cause of our enemies. As she lay at anchor at Bucks Harbor, we ran our sloop alongside and boarded her. We met with no resistance. So we carried them up the river, fitted it out for our own service. The The Committee of Safety selected Ben Foster, George Stillman, Abiel Sprague, Nathan Longfellow, myself, and 3 others I can't even remember the names, to carry our prisoners to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and to deliver them to George Washington himself. 2 vessels, 2 small vessels were fitted out for that purpose.
Local patriots, again, this is going on to, that was his first line of service, was, at the Battle of Narrator. But then he went on to also serve in the Navy. Local patriots captured additional British ships and fought off a large force that tried to take control of Machias in the Battle of the Brennan in 1777. Privateers and other operating out of along Maine's coast continued to harass the British Royal Navy throughout the rest of the Revolutionary War. Ephraim Chase was commissioned a captain in the Continental Navy.
After the British evacuated Boston in March of 1776, I commenced coasting along the coast between Machias and Boston. In March of 77, Colonel John Allen, the commander of the local militia and superintendent of the Indians, presented me with the commission from Congress wherein I was authorized to take command of the sloop. We mounted 10 guns on her, cruised for the Continental Navy, and captured a number of enemy ships.
Massachusetts Provincial Congress subsequently stationed Captain Chase at Machias to defend the harbor and supply troops and Indians with provisions and other necessities. His outgoing dedication and contribution to the war effort helped the cause of freedom by providing this additional essential defense in the home area.
I engaged in the service and performed my duties to the extent of my abilities until 1782. Colonel Allen then received orders from the General Court at Cambridge, Massachusetts, to send a salute to them. As I was out of health at the time, the command evolved on Elijah Ayres, my first lieutenant. And although this concluded my active military service, I am thankful for God's blessings that I survived and was able to return home, raise my family here in East Machias, and meet Rick Scribner.
Both Captain Chase's official commission from Congress and his personal journey detailing his participation were unfortunately ruined. During an absence from his home, a fire devastated his family's buildings, furniture, and many of the personal effects, including his commission and journal. Following his service as a captain in the Continental Navy, Ephraim Chase returned to his family and his work as a millwright in the area. In 1834, when he was 89 years old, he applied for a military pension. This presentation by the 4 of us today is based upon his actual recorded statements at that time about his contributions to the war effort. He and his fellow patriots help provide you and me with blessings of freedom.
And that part, that part that Sarah just read is the part that she showed me, and this came from that old book, we call it an old book now, but the history of Machias, is that correct? And he was, as I said, he was trying to remember, but he was about 89 at the time. But, what a loss in that fire, and his personal diary, and his log, those logs are just fantastic today.